Welcome to the tutorial in this series on beginner openings. The target audience for this series is aimed at those who are new to the game, consider themselves a bit novice, or simply struggle in the beginning of the game. The opening in chess is a series of moves aimed at getting the pieces out and into good positions before entering the middle game. This study is not to teach actual openings, but rather talk about good habits to apply when playing. Detailed openings will be added in the future studies, and links will be added at the bottom of this study. You can see in the chapters the content we will be looking at, and we will start with controlling the center. Controlling the center is very important. As pieces try to move around the board, it is the person who controls the center who has a nice advantage. When we talk about controlling the center, it is not the square our piece lands on, but rather the squares it is overlooking. As you can see, the pawn on d4 is now controlling c5 and e5. After black plays the reply of d5, you can see that white has control of the c5 and e5, however black has control of c4 and e4. As the game continues, both players will develop their pieces to attempt to control the central squares. So white has developed to f3, helping control the d4 and e5 square. Black develops a piece, however, instead of bringing it into the center, it instead goes to the edge of the board. The knight is contesting the c5 square and controlling b4. When I say contesting, I mean that two pieces are looking at that piece, at that square, and therefore it is contested, it is not actually controlled. Look, it's not a great move, but there were better options such as knight f6, which could have helped support d5 and control e4. Now that we have a goal of controlling the center, let's talk about moving the pieces, starting with pawns. A lot of new players fall into the mistake of making too many pawn moves in the beginning. We're going to start with e4. A good rule to follow is to limit the amount of pawn moves you make in the opening stages of the game to about 2 or 3 moves. Here, white has played e4, controlling d5 and f5. An additional benefit to e4 was that it has opened the diagonal for the queen and the bishop. Now, if we want to continue playing pawn moves, a good move could be to play d4, control even more of the center, and open up lines for the dark squared bishop. Now that we've done the 2 pawn moves, it is time to develop our pieces. There really is no need to play any more pawn moves at this stage. Looking at the position now, white has control of d5, e5, d4, f5, and is contesting c5. Black is contesting c5, but doesn't really have anything else going on in this position. White continues to develop pieces and control the center. Meanwhile, black continues to waste time by moving pawns. Even though no pieces have left the board, white is already significantly ahead. So remember, when working on your opening, unless you have a specific plan in mind, try not to focus too much on moving those pawns and focus on getting your minor pieces set up instead. With that in mind, let's talk about developing minor pieces. In the opening stages of the game, it is important to get the minor pieces out early and take control of the center. A good principle to follow is that of knights before bishops. White controls d5 and f5, whilst also opening the diagonal for the light squared bishop. White now develops a knight, attacking the e5 pawn, controlling g5 and h4, and contesting the d4 square. Black brings out the knight to defend the pawn on e5 and help contest the d4 square. White had several options here, but to keep it simple, they will develop the other knight. We've now entered the 4 knights game, which is a good beginner opening that focuses on knights before bishops principle. White and black are both fighting for control over the center, and a good follow-up here would be to bring the light squared bishop out. Both sides are developing fine here. Although the structure is symmetrical, white and black will both castle early. So we've gone over the basics of the opening: control the center, pawn moves, and developing pieces. It is important though when developing pieces that we limit the amount of moves we do with each piece. Basically, try not to move the same piece twice during the opening. The opening will set up the entire game, and it is important to get all pieces into a good position early. We have gone over the basics of the opening: control the center, pawn moves, and developing pieces. It is important when developing pieces that we limit the amount of moves we do with each piece. Try not to move the same piece twice. The opening will set up the entire game, and it is important to get all the pieces into a good position. Here, black moves the knight, a rather pointless move, as the knight was actually already in a good position. White could easily kick the knight with a3 or c3, however, chose to develop another piece. If you take the time to look at this position, you can see that white has two pieces out, moving each knight only once. As well as having two pawns controlling the center, white is far better here in development, whereas black has wasted a move by moving the same minor piece twice, neglecting to control the center as well as development. Another good goal of the opening is to get the king to safety as quickly as possible. The pieces blocking the king from castling kingside are the knight and the light squared bishop. White has played bishop to c4, and although we spoke about knights before bishops, it is not a rule you have to follow, none of these are, but rather a guide. White has now made way for his king to castle early. White now enjoys a safe king, and a good follow-up would be to focus on developing the queenside pieces before black gets too active. Another big mistake a lot of players make in the opening is bringing their queen out too early. A good rule to remember is to develop the minor pieces, which are your knights and bishops, first. By bringing the queen out, which is your strongest piece, it will make it a big target for your opponent and could end up getting trapped. The white queen has come out too early, black continues with their development. White has attempted at a quick, easy 4-move checkmate and instead has a queen on f3, which now stops the development of the knight to f3. The piece has moved several times and black is slightly better here. Okay, so now we've spoken about controlling the center, pawn moves, developing pieces, not moving the same piece too many times, not bringing the queen out too early. Now the last thing that we need to focus on is connecting the rooks. So once we've developed our pieces and brought our queen out, the rooks will now be connected and our opening is complete. The rooks are now connected and the opening is complete. It's a very easy rule to follow if you have followed all the other rules in the opening. Although these are some good rules to follow in the opening stage of the game, it is important to remember that sometimes you will need to break some of these rules. White has developed to e4 and black has played knight f6. Now we spoke earlier about not doing too many pawn moves in the opening and focusing on development. However, here white decides to play e5. Black is going to have to ignore the rule of not moving the same piece twice, otherwise black will lose the knight. White chooses to continue attacking the knight, black will need to move it again. Black is not doing so great here. However, moving the knight to a safe square was a priority, and therefore breaking the don't move the same piece twice rule was okay. White has also done 4 pawn moves, but all of these moves had a purpose. White has good control of the center, as well as easy access for the bishops and the queen to enter the game. So that's it for the basic principles to help you get started on the opening. Remember, we spoke about controlling the center, pawn movements, developing pieces, castling early, not bringing the queen out too early, and making sure those rooks get connected. Don't forget you can always break these rules if you need to. I hope this helps you improve your game. Thank you for taking the time to follow this video. I really hope you were able to learn something new. In the next video, I'll be focusing on openings that all beginners need to know. If you would like to see more of my content, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Twitch and Twitter. Links are in the description below. There will also be a link to the study on lichess so that you can go through the content at your own pace. Once again, thank you for watching.